So hi everyone, I had something different planned for today, and I'm going to have to do it even more different than I originally thought, as I had wanted to do a little show and tell for what my process is on color images, but OBS crashed for the second portion, so I had to get a little creative. So I always start with whether I'm doing grayscale or color, I always start with a washed gray background. It's easy to see values and it's less harsh on my eyes. And when I do sketching, I get some references first for poses, as I'm not confident with my anatomy, and I always start out with very loose sketches, focusing more on the shapes, the composition, the movement, and the overall flow of the piece. I find it gets very stiff if I don't do that. And some things that you'll see me do in here is I don't like paws, I don't like hands, I don't like feet. I find it very difficult to do, so you'll see me covering those up later. Try not to do it often, but those back feet are going to disappear. And here I'm just kind of readjusting the head. There's the snarly boy now. I am redrawing the head. It is totally okay to redraw. I often redraw different parts of the sketches. When I do traditional, I often repaint, erase, and resketch. All that good stuff. It's just a normal process. It's very helpful. Yeah, so I did a lot of adjusting here, a lot of readjusting on everything. I probably should have done some thumbnail sketches, but I was rather impatient, which is why I readjust a lot of these things. Another reason I readjust a lot of these things is they don't fit. They don't fit the body, like the head doesn't fit the body. I didn't fit it before, and it's not gonna fit it quite yet. It's going to, like, see, I just readjusted that eye because it didn't fit. It was too small. And I believe this head was too big originally. I mean, it's just a learning process. You can see I'm kind of sketching out basic skull anatomy, and I mean, it's not even a real skull. I should devote more time to learning anatomy. Here's a tip. If you want to be able to draw something intuitively, part of it is drawing it often. Another part is actually learning the underlying anatomy of it, whether it's plants or animals, humans especially. Something about humans is not intuitive. I'm now just fleshing out more of the sketch, kind of reaffirming some of my lines, getting rid of some of the sketchies, so I can go back in later with some line art. I'm going to be readjusting those ears at some point. Yeah, this head is a little too big. There goes the jaw. Try to get a real wide mouth. And those dreaded feet. So this character, you'll see it in a little while. They actually have a cloud tail and some like cloud shoulders. I use the tail to just cover up those back feet. Just get them out of there. Shrinking that head. Again, this head gave me so much trouble, but I wanted to get it right because I didn't want to have like a disproportionate anything. Because that's not the aesthetic I was going for. You can see I really wanted those front paws. Don't know why I decided I wanted to, but I did. So the overall idea was I wanted the character to be eating the sun, because this is like its sunset form. It didn't really come from anything other than I had the idea that a sun would look cool in its maw. So it popped into my head. I'm like, yeah, it'd be really cool to have a nice sun in its mouth being eaten, and like the clouds are just consuming the rest of it. That'll be really cool. That's gonna be really hard. And then I did it. I just went ahead. If something seems like it's gonna be really hard, don't be afraid to do it, because that's how you improve. Be ambitious. Please be ambitious. Really cool things come out of being ambitious. And you can keep things in your safe zone. Like, this is a dog. I like dogs. I've been getting better at clouds. This is a simple pose compared to everything else. So there's parts of it that kept me in my comfort zone, and then there's parts of it that pushed me out of it. I like clouds, but clouds are difficult. I've never drawn a sun before. I decided to push my anatomy skills. So there's their nice chest fluff. I had some cool ideas with this at first. I had kind of wanted to be turning into the clouds, turning into a mist, kind of spilling over their legs and trailing off underneath their abdomen. It didn't really come to fruition that way. There go the feet. Readjusting the clouds so I can cover more feet. It didn't really turn out that way, but I suppose I'm happy with how it turned out in the end. See, I was talking about don't be afraid to readjust, talking about those ears. I had thought I was finished with the head a while ago, then I realized that this character has rather large ears. So I went back and I readjusted again to try and get those in proportion with the character without being comically large. Oh, little save. Don't mind the images in the save. So this is actually very different than my usual line art. I usually do a rather crisp line art with one of the ink pens. I think it's like the calligraphy pen. You can see I almost didn't go with it, but in the end I was like, I wanted to experiment with a sketchy style. I really like the way a clean sketch looks, and I feel like I bog myself down too much when I use that crisp, small line art style. I feel like a lot of the movement and flow I originally had in my pieces will get lost in those crisp lines. It'll become almost robotic, no matter how much effort and thought I put into getting movement. So I had wanted to try this out. I've done it a couple other times, and it's much more forgiving for my my shaky hand if I can kind of sketch the line art a little bit. It's different with traditional, not too much, but this definitely helped with this piece, I think. I also usually outline in black. Here you could see I kind of color picked on the character for one of their darker colors and then darkened it even further so that it would mesh a little bit better with the overall color scheme. Now that's something that I don't do. I've never experimented with that, but I do like the way that it looks, and people tend to get really cool aesthetics when they have colored line art, and I don't really want to have super colored line art, but it was something. I just wanted to explore. Just let me explore. You can see even with allowing for a bit more sketchiness, it can be a little messy at times. So I had to go back in and redo those things. Those dreaded feet. Oh, those dreaded feet. This paw actually came out really good. I'm really proud of this front paw. I think I actually didn't fully draw the other paw. I think I just copied that over. This was actually the last piece. Yeah, it was the last piece in a trade for a character I wanted to, see, I'm copying that paw over. It's totally fine to do that. It's a nice trick. But yeah, this was the last piece in a character trade. I don't do a lot of art just for myself anymore, which kind of makes me sad. But soon, very soon I will be able to. This piece and an upcoming one were the last two that I was going to do for other people, and then I have a couple waiting in the wings that I want to do for my characters. Some world building stuff, some character building stuff. So yeah, I guess stay tuned. There is a video I want to do, kind of getting this little mascot idea I have in my head out for the channel, and I've been thinking about that for a while, like going through the process of a character design. Warning, when I character design, I don't do like professional steps for character design. This is not a course. This upcoming one is not a course for character design. It's just, you'll see how I go through and decide on a mascot character. So I had actually kind of wanted to make the back one look like thunderclouds. I ended up kind of nixing that idea, because it didn't, I mean, even looking at it now, it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the clouds. But it was a cool idea to kind of make them into storm clouds. But I think instead of making them look like storm clouds, how the other ones kind of look like cloud banks and storm fronts, I think that's much better. Kind of like, this whole piece is kind of like, just before the sun goes out, just before the character eats it, which it makes a lot more sense to see the front of a storm, the beginning, the warning signs that you're just now seeing and it's already too late, you just have to get indoors and wait it out. I think that suits it much better, the overall feel of the piece, than an actual storm cloud, because this is supposed to be like right before, that all of that anxiety and that build up. I was just kind of messing around getting a basic, I guess, underlayer for the sun. I didn't really use it, but it was slightly helpful in like figuring out where I wanted the bright spots and the dark spots to be. If I really want to be able to do stars and stuff, stars and planets and all that, I need to study a little bit more, kind of like with anatomy. So now we're on to coloring. And whereas I've been experimenting this whole time, this is something that I always do with my color. This has not changed. I always put down the base layer. I typically color pick and I put down that base layer of color. I'm kind of avoiding the clouds here, and you'll see why later. But what I do with this base color is Krita has a clipping tool. And what the clipping tool does is it creates a quick clipping group, and any layer you put above a base layer confines any other drawing to the bounds of that layer. So by putting down this base color, anything I put on top will not go outside of the lines. So it's a little bit of work, a little bit of extra work staying in all the lines. But in the long run, it looks so much crisper than if I just selected around the lines and inverted it. It also allows me to have kind of gaps in my line work. Whereas if I was going to select everything, I would have to close up all of the gaps, which is really just a pain to go through and be like, okay, where's the gap this time? And fill it in. So the reason that I avoided the clouds, going back to that, the reason I avoided the clouds is I decided, for multiple reasons, that I was not going to do them on the same layer as the fur color and the fur detail. I was going to paint them with a watercolor brush. Why? Because it's the only way I figured out how to actually make clouds look good on Krita. I don't know how to do it any other way. So you'll see me struggle later, but I like the overall effect that came out of it. And just a little bit extra, because this is just wispy cloud, it's more fur than anything. There we go. Alright, so we're gonna see some magic here soon. Maybe. If I remember what's coming up. Yes. So here is that clipping layer. So I'm actually... I kind of have to erase a lot, and sometimes I have to readjust the bounds of the base layer, because as you just saw, there are gaps between the base layer and the line work, and I don't like that. But it's much better, much easier to do than with previous methods I've used. So I'm actually coloring, not here, but with the first coat of color, I was coloring out of the bounds, and nothing showed up, because it's confined to those base layers. And I had a lot of fun. This character is meant to like mimic clouds, as you can see, and I had a lot of fun with the blotchy cloud designs on the character. I had to erase a lot, and I had to be careful about where I put them, and I had to adjust the base layer, but I'm very happy with how they came out. They look really cool. You'll see them be finished in a little bit, but it was almost relaxing to do these markings, which is strange, because when I've done this character before, the markings have not been as relaxing. They've been kind of a struggle to do, but I really liked the effect. I don't know if it's just because I've been doing a lot more traditional painting, and I've just become more confident with my skills, or if I just kind of stopped thinking, because sometimes when you just stop thinking about what you're doing, and suddenly your artwork is amazing, kind of like those drawings you would do at 3 a.m. and you're like, why can't I do this when I'm fully awake? And then you try again the next morning and it comes out like a stick figure. That's kind of how I feel I was with this, was just I got way in the zone and I don't know if I could repeat it. I'm gonna be readjusting that small band of color later. It was not enough to get blotchies. Now that band of color is a little bit smaller on the character, but not by much. So by readjust, I mean I spread the blotches out a little bit more. Alright, and we're just gonna finish up with some skin tones, claws, that kind of stuff, and we're gonna do eyes. I love eyes. I think they're really cool. Eyes don't like me. They are so difficult for me to draw. I can never get the effect I'm going for. Either my resolution is too small, or the picture is too small, or I try and zoom in and I'm like, this is not crisp. And even these eyes did not come out the way I wanted them to. I fiddled around a lot with it because it just didn't work. There's some I've in the past I've done some really cool eyes, and there's a lot of people out there where I've looked at their eye tutorials and it's just very cool. I just can't do eyes. It's something I'll have to. It's another thing. Now we have 3 things on that list of things I need to sit down and do. This is another one of them. But overall, I mean, the eye did come out decent. Just I wish it was better. So now we are putting down the base layer of those clouds. I'm fiddling around until I found that water brush I like. Now, it's not really it doesn't really act the way that watercolor actually acts, but it's, you know, it's pretty good. It mixes as you put it on, as if it was wet paint being mixed with wet paint. It allows for me to get some decently solid colors and also get some cool transition colors, which is what I usually struggle with digital art, is getting these blended areas, because with traditional I would just use my finger and some water and I'd get a pretty decent gradient with acrylic paint, and with watercolor it's fairly decent to put a wash down between two colors. With digital, I can't use my finger for a different effect. I have to use various brushes. So the watercolor brush, this specific one, really helps out with getting that blended effect I want. It was very useful later when I was putting down cloud details. Alright, so this is about where this part stops, and we're going to get a bit creative now. I had stopped recording for the day, and then about 2 weeks later, when I had time to work on it again, I had gone back and started recording. Sometime during that process, OBS had crashed, and I lost the whole thing. So what I had to do is what we're about to do. We're gonna go to the actual file, which you can see I have up here, and I'm gonna take you through some of the layers and the process with you guys. This video is already pretty long, so I apologize. Thank you for anyone who has stuck through this far. So, I'm gonna take off all the effects, and we're just gonna sit and look at this in all its glory. So I had started originally with the sun. I was really happy with how the sun came out. I wish I could have shown you guys. But on that layer with the line work, I finished up the cloud with that watercolor brush. I actually used two different ones. I used the one that I had originally put the color down with, and I used a smaller one for some of these fine wispy details. I really got a painterly look with the clouds, which is honestly the only way I know how to do clouds. I wish I could make them look more realistic, but it's fairly decent. And you can see kind of where the clouds are closer to Freyr's body. It's even more painterly. I kind of wanted to do that to simulate the fur turning into a bit of a more solid cloud shape, then becoming that wispy feather light cloud. And then going up, this is just with an overlay layer and a color layer, just duplicates of the same thing, getting the glow, like the corona and the haze around the sun. I probably could have left out the color layer, but I liked how it pushed up that color just a little bit more. Now with another overlay layer, it's just putting on some yellow again. And there's some black in there too to darken up certain areas and lighten up other areas. And that was just to get that glow of the sun on there, and then to saturate, really push those colors forward in the clouds near the edge. Now with the multiply, I got in with the shading, mostly muscular definition, some darkening of the clouds, all that good stuff. And we get here. You can see it kind of went out of the lines in certain areas over here, but that's fine. And then another overlay. As you can see, I love overlay and I love multiply. I don't know what the other ones do, the other filter layers. This just gets even more of that glow of the last, like, hurrah of the sun before it is devoured. And some burn, get a little different. The burn pushes up some red, some more saturation, makes it look like there's that, if you've ever seen Avatar, the Last Airbender, the episode where, spoilers if you haven't watched this like decade-old show, if you have seen the episode where the moon spirit is killed and Yue has to become the new moon spirit, how the moon turns red and everything is awash in that red glow, I guess this kind of reminds me of it, as if that red glow is coming up as the sun is about to die. Anyway, moving on. Another multiply layer. just to get a vignette. Oh, also, with that burn layer, some of those lighted areas, very sharply defined now. Multiply just gets a vignette, kind of more of that encroaching darkness. And this next overlay layer is just to pump up those lights a little bit more. I really went crazy with the filters this time. The last layer is just some white highlights and my signatures. So what I do with my signatures is I take a dark color in an area, I darken it a little bit, and then my signature almost looks like it blends in down there. And I have two of them. I usually put two around my actual signature and then my modified signature. So yeah, that is the final product. I think this whole thing took me about 5.5 hours, and I've gotten this recording down to, what, 24 minutes maybe? You'll see the actual time. It was maybe closer to 30 minutes, so this is a bit of a longer episode, I'm sorry for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed. I like this format. I kind of want to do this a little bit more, get better, make the videos a little bit shorter, so they're less time consuming to sit down and watch, but yeah. See you guys around.